right, so welcome to Elaine's Literary Salon. I'm Jeffrey Higgins. This is my wife Cynthia's and my restaurant, and we've made this a hub for authors in the DC metro area. You are the 150th author that I've interviewed here, so congratulations. That's a cool number.
That's a cool number.
It's really fun to have you.
Thank you.
So if you're an author or you know an author, please let them know about us. We offer free space, and we want this to be a safe space where authors can come and talk about their work and celebrate it and just be all things literary. We host a bunch of book clubs and writers groups, and we have some really fun events coming up too. Karen Marginot is a certified leadership coach, author, and speaker specializing in facilitating mindful transformations for individuals, leaders, and teams. Her first book, The Bad Girls Club, promises of spirituality-based recovery. It's a deeply personal journey through addiction to redemption, in which Marginot shines a light to a way out of those grappling with the devastation of alcoholism and addiction. Light reading.
Yes.
So please welcome Karen. So first of all, thank you for your book. This is really terrific. It's congratulations, because it's a heck of an effort to finish a book.
Yes.
I'm always impressed when an author is sitting here with a finished book, because I counsel authors here at the salon, and every day somebody comes in and is just not getting to the end of their book for some reason. So you made it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Bad Girls Club?
Sure, yeah. So I talk about this in my book. I knew by the time I was 4 years old that I wanted to be an author, but I was too afraid to let anybody read any of my things. So I crafted a career as a technical writer, which was a little safer. But when I had a birthday and there's one that ended with a 0, a particular birthday with a 0, I finally got inspired to put the argument to bed. Am I a writer or not? I'm going to try my hand at this. And this was the story that came out. And it pretty much demanded to come out. I did not intend to write a book. I thought I was just going to write this and get it out of my system and then write more important things. But as it turns out, this was a book that was timely. And it's like my friend Monica says, women need to hear women's stories. And so that became an inspiration for me to finish it and put it out.
So what could be more important than a story about this, about overcoming adversity and getting your life together and achieving things, and like it's a roadmap, right? So I mean, like, I'm just curious. I'm not saying that to be glib. Like, just like what was in your mind when you're thinking, I'll do this and then I'll do something more important. Like why were you minimizing the importance of this?
Exactly. Well, I think I was one of those people who I didn't have a lot of confidence about my own story. And I thought, well, there's a million recovery stories out there. Right when I was finishing this, Matthew Perry's book came out, and I was like, oh my God, who's going to read mine, right? It's Matthew Perry. There are so many of these stories out there. And I thought, well, I really wanted to kind of lean into more of the leadership stuff and make an impact on my industry. So that's what I was considering more important. But in the end, this is a story of transformation and leadership that can be applied to almost any situation in your life.
So is it possible to write about leadership without writing personal examples?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I think also a big part of my story and a big part of my journey, really kind of talking about the personal reveals and how intimate I got with my story and offering it. I was someone who was really racked with a lot of shame. And I felt very shameful about ways that I had made bad judgments, made bad decisions, let myself down, let my family down. I held myself back with a lot of shame. And the more I started telling my story, the more I was hearing people did the same thing. There are other women who went down the same paths. And then this no longer became about me. It became about the human experience. And it became important for me to start demolishing shame around having human experiences. We all have them.
So before we get into the story itself, how long did this take you to write?
All right, so when I began the book, I was working full-time at a very intense job, and I only got about 2,000 words down in an 8-month period. And then I took a 3-month leave of absence from my job and wrote 45,000 words.
That's so interesting because everybody who's tried to write, they write in, sometimes people write in spurts, so they write in little bits each day. And so everyone's different, right? With that. Did you find it was, 8 months, 2,000 words is not a lot of writing,
Not a
right?
lot of writing.
Was it just impossible for the way your life was working to write at the
really
same
was.
time?
I didn't have the energy to really devote to it, but once I cleared the space for it, it was no longer work. It was joyful. It just poured out of me.
Did you find that you had to take the same like attention and energy that you had in your job that you're taking as leave of absence and apply it to this? Because still, if no one's there, right, you still have to get up every day and write.
It was almost like the story was writing me. I would get up and I would make my coffee and I would do my thing and I deal with the dogs and the cats and then I'd sit down and it became a joyful experience. It really was. It became pleasurable and something I really look forward to doing every day. And some days I wrote for 20 minutes and got a little bit done, but I felt transformed. And then other days I would write for 4 or 5 hours and it felt like 20 minutes had gone by.
And so when you wrote the book, tell us a little bit about your path, because there's one thing to write a manuscript and most people who actually finish a manuscript never publish it, which is a weird fact, right?
Yeah.
But so what did you do once the end, I have at least a first draft. What was your pathway from there?
Well, where I really had gotten the start on this was a friend of mine had said, when are you going to write that book? And I said, yeah, I don't know. I'm not feeling. She said, go on a writer's retreat. So I ended up going on a writer's retreat. I Googled writer's retreats, and the one that I found was in Kenya. Okay. I said, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to Kenya. So off to Kenya I go. And I met a woman there who was running the writer's retreat, Sarah Bullen. She has a writing company called The Writer's Room out of Cape Town, South Africa. And she listened to me, took a look at some of my writing and said, listen, I want you to join my group. And so she kind of mentored me through it. And so I just wanted to get the story out of my system. I had no designs on it being a book. I just thought, I'm going to just finish it, right? And then one day I said, Sarah, I think I'm finished. And she said, great. Now make a list of publishers. I said, what? She said, make a list of publishers that will take unagented manuscripts. And I said, okay. So it was almost like my process of recovery in AA, where somebody gave me a suggestion and I followed directions, just one step at a time. And so I made that list. And then she said, okay, put together a book proposal. And I did. And then I started sending it out. So it was just every single step was unexpected and a surprise and a gift. I think it was wonderful for me because I didn't have high expectations going into it. I just wanted to finish the work.
Well, when you say you didn't want this to be a book, you were just writing the story to get it out of you, and right. But honestly, that's the best work, whether it's fiction or nonfiction or whatever. Right. It's where the author just wants to tell a story, to tell a good story, or to tell an important story, and they're not being driven by market forces, for example.
No. Yeah. And I was telling you, I shouldn't say this out loud because my publisher may be listening, but it didn't matter to me if I sold a single book. I just wanted to help people. That's it. And I have a goal to give a certain amount away, and I just want it to help somebody. And I've had emails from a couple of people that have been unbelievable, just gifts about how it transformed them or how it helped them. And I figure my work is done. Like anything else that comes of this is gravy.
That is honestly, I think that is just the best moment for a writer, when you get that email from a reader saying, you saved my life, or I've had these amazing things, because literally there's nothing better than that, right? Hitting a bestseller list, none of that would compare to that you changed somebody's life.
Yes.
So how long did it take for you to, from the time you finished to let's start looking for publishers?
Yeah.
How long before the book was published and in print?
That's a good question. It was pretty fast. So I started looking for publishers in February of 24, started submitting book proposals towards the end of March, and I signed a contract in April. And,
wow, that's fast.
And I had 4 offers at that time, which was astonishing to me. And it was published the following January.
Wow, congratulations. So tell me about that moment, and this is my favorite part. These are like, there's so much like rejection and misery in the writing business, but when you actually get a book published, it's a big deal. Tell me, like, when you got that box comes to your house, tell us about that moment. I love hearing these stories.
It was surreal. It was crazy. My son happened to be home at the time, and he helped me, take pictures and things. It was absolutely surreal. It's one thing to see it in a PDF form or an electronic form, or you're printing it out on your little paper, but to hold it in your hands, it just, it's a life of its own now, right? It was surreal. It was absolutely beautiful.
That's a beautiful story, and it's so common, right? Like, I had an author sitting there last night who did the same thing. They picked up their book and they were like bending it to make sure it was real. It's an actual tangible thing. That's fantastic. So why don't you tell us bring us through the story? What is this story that you had to get out of you? Let's go through it a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So I think you meet me sort of at the beginning of the end in my story. I was a young girl who grew up here in Northern Virginia. I had a regular family. There were great things about my family, things that I would not, recommend for anybody else, things I learned about my own parenting, right? So that's always a mixed bag with families, but they loved me and they cared for me, but I always felt that there was something really wrong with me. And I always had a lot of anxiety. I always had depression. I had some physical issues. There was a lot that I was dealing with at a young age. And I found my way, it was the 70s, into my parents' liquor cabinet. And by the time my drinking was really hitting a peak in my early 20s, drinking had really stopped working for me. So there were times no matter how much I drank, I couldn't get drunk. I couldn't get high. I just felt miserable, and I couldn't be in this world, and I couldn't get out of this world. It was just this hellish existence that if people are on that journey, some of them are very familiar with that. And so I started intentionally having car accidents because I wanted to get out. I just wanted to get out. And so you meet me in the opening scenes at the top of my last car accident. And it was right on 110 getting on to 395 South. And there's an S-curve there. And I remember it was like 3 a.m, and I just looked up and I hit the gas, closed my eyes, and turned the wheel and flipped the car. And after that, a series of events started happening. My mother called me and cut me off. She knew what I had been trying to do. And then I got fired from a job. And then I needed to find a job because I had to pay rent. And so I met somebody who was a job placement person who got me hired at my last company because of my astrology sign. Seriously. She said, I only place people by astrology signs, and tell me your sign. And I told her, and she said, well, that's great because we got a floor full of Pisces over there, and I'm going to go, I'm going to send you over there. You're going to get things done, right? And I said, yes. Well, the woman who hired me had 10 years in AA. And so it was just this series of circumstances that a higher power, God, the universe, fairies, whatever your jam is, had set up for me. And within 6 weeks, she did an intervention on me and put me in rehab. And that's really where the story begins. So I didn't want to, in 12-step programs, we use this model of storytelling where you basically say what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And that's kind of the format of this book. And I also sectioned it off like mind, body, and spirit. But I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on what it was like. What I really wanted to talk about was the work you do as you recover. And that's where the bulk of the story really takes place is the front matter is you kind of giving you a flavor of what my life was like, what happened, but then what really happens afterwards. You don't just get sober and snap your fingers and everything's great. You got a lot of work to do. And it depends on what you want out of a drug-free or sober kind of existence. Some people are satisfied with just being alcohol-free. Other people, like me, want more. I'm greedy. I'm going to squeeze everything I can out of this life, and I want it to be joyful, and I want to be of service, and I want it to be meaningful and purposeful, and that's where the work is.
So how much, and I don't know. So if these are simplistic
Yeah.
questions, let me
That's okay.
know. But I'm just curious, like with alcoholism,
Yeah.
how much of it is I mean, there's obviously a chemical dependency, right? There's a behavioral dependency, but when all behavior is you shape like neural pathways, right,
Yep.
based on whatever that behavior is. So once you stop drinking and maybe you break from that chemical dependency, how long does it take to like rewire those neural
Oh,
pathways to find like the happiness? Because you can be talking decades, right? It was a long period of time.
it
And it
was
would,
12 years. Yeah,
okay,
12
12
years.
years. So
12
that's a
years of hard
long
drinking.
time.
Yeah.
So how long of 12 years of heavy drinking, how long does it take after that to be able to train yourself to find happiness in a different way?
Wow, that's a really good question. And again, your mileage will vary. Everybody's path is different. And I just want to state, I am not a medical person. I'm not a therapist. It's just my experience that I'm sharing. I remember sitting in rehab in Charlotte, North Carolina, and and everybody's miserable. You're just miserable. You feel like hell. Early sobriety feels like hell. And I remember this counselor coming over to us going, I don't know why you people are belly aching. You all are tough as nails. You do things that roaches won't even survive. You do things yourself. You all, oh, get over yourselves. And it takes 5 years for you to get sober. And I was like, oh my God, 5 years? 5 years? I can't go 6 hours. Are you kidding me? 5 years. Holy Toledo. And I am here to tell you, it took about 5 years for me to start getting really happy. It really did. I think for me, and again, I had a lot of drugs in my history too. I mean, it was the 80s. It was, the height of the cocaine crisis here. And I couldn't stay awake without chemicals. I would fall asleep in the middle of the day because I was on like puppy uppers and doggy downers, at night. And so it took like a year for my body just to start recovering. And then, there's the whole emotional regulation piece, which I not only had to let the hormones and the body systems get regulated, which it just takes time, but then I had to learn tools and techniques for managing myself. So it did take a long time, but that's why I think being in community in recovery, whatever community you want to choose, is extremely helpful because being around other people kind of takes you out of yourself a little bit and you're not thinking about how miserable you are all the time. So I was lucky.
When you're with other people who are going through the same thing, I mean, there's obviously probably a comfort, right, in not being alone, but is it also difficult because everyone there, you're seeing the same behavior, you're hearing about behavior that you don't want modeled?
No, I don't think so because you're usually not hanging around with people who is at the same stage of recovery that you. So there's a saying in the program where they say stick with the winners. So you want to stick with people who are doing well, who are a little bit farther down the path, and they start taking you out. They'll take you out on hikes. You go to the movies, come have coffee. Let's go to a restaurant. Let's go to a literary salon and go listen to somebody else. Why don't you try helping someone? Try helping somebody else. And all those things take you out of your mind and that self-focus. And then before you know it, you are kind of feeling really better.
In 5 years, though.
I mean, it's little by little by little, right? I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't straight miserable the whole time. There were pockets, and then over time you start realizing, oh wait, I haven't felt bad in a couple days. Oh wow, I haven't been depressed in like 2 months. Oh wow, I haven't had a panic attack in 4 months. It's just little by little. You're not aware of it so much in the moment, but it's always hindsight.
Do they use cognitive behavioral therapies for alcoholism?
I think some therapists do, yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm most interested in what the data shows that actually works, And
Yeah.
I've heard that 12-step program. I mean, it's been a long time since I've looked at studies on this, but it is effective. Are you familiar with any of the data on these things or the studies?
No, I am not a scientist.
Because a lot of things don't
researcher.
work at all, but I've heard
don't.
this one does. I just don't remember the numbers.
Yeah.
So what were some of the other techniques? I mean, you did therapy, right?
Therapy. I did a lot of, there's a lot of introduction to spirituality in 12-step models. And I had a lot of problems with that. I had a lot of problems with religion. I didn't want to be any part of organized religion. I had a lot of anger about that area. But a woman who's a friend of mine, said, well, why don't you just get curious and go check things out? And I said, that's a great idea. And so I did. And I spent like a 2-year period in my early sobriety studying different religions and visiting different places. And I went to synagogues and mosques and churches of all kinds. And I got educated, and I found what worked for me. And what worked for me ended up being sort of a combination of yoga and nature and song and art and all kinds of things like that. And then I've spent a lot of time in therapy, which I find extremely helpful. Exercise is huge for me, getting back in the body. I had so many unpleasant experiences in my body, and I can guarantee if you ask, 3/4 of this room is women, or most of the women, the people here are women. If you took a poll, most of them have had at least one or two traumatic experiences in the body. It's very common in our society. So being in our body is not necessarily a comfortable or safe place for women. So I had to learn how to change that narrative. And exercise was my way in,
Okay.
and yoga.
So are these tools that you are using for the alcoholism that you're describing, are they also applicable when you're like looking at different goals? You said you had that inflection point, so now you want to find happiness in a different way. Yes. You want to do service in a different way.
Absolutely.
So are the same things, or is it something different? So like the exercise, your own spirituality or calmness and yoga.
Yeah, meditation's a big one too. I think, it took me a while to get through that early sobriety stage. And then my journey was not so much focused on recovering from alcoholism. It became about living. Mm-hmm. And how am I going to live with purpose? And how am I going to build a career? And how can I be of service? And gosh, I want to have a family. And how am I going to make that happen? And, life begins, right? And all those tools were very, very, very helpful. I think the two most constant tools that have worked for me have been meditation and yoga. Have been sort of my mainstays through every phase of this. And then writing became huge.
So in the meditation, is it like, this hyper focus? Is that something that by meditating you're silencing like the negativity in your mind, or is it something where you're able to concentrate and focus and like laser focus on whatever the next goal is? Like what is it about the meditation exactly that's working for you?
Yeah. It's not focus at all for me, and it's not intensive, and it's not trying to get rid of anything. It's not even trying to quiet. It's for me, I was when I started trying to meditate and learning about meditation, I was still pretty young. And I was not a very still or calm person. I had to be moving. And I ran into some books by Thich Nhat Hanh. And he talked a lot about walking meditation and moving when you're meditating. And so I began to meditate. I learned about meditation. I didn't even know I was doing it by washing the dishes. I was living in Park Fairfax in Alexandria, and I had a beautiful kitchen window over the sink, right? And it looked out on this cherry tree. And I would be standing there just washing the dishes. And after a while, I realized the dishes were done. I didn't know the dishes were done, and I'd kind of zoned out. Mm-hmm. And that's when I went, I think this is meditation. So repetitive motion, knitting with really nice yarn because it feels good in my fingers. Repetitive motion will get me into that meditative state. So it's not so much an intentional focus, and it's not for me trying to do anything. It's more of a letting go. It's a very soft releasing. It's a relaxing in a different way.
So you said it's not a quieting of the mind. So when you were doing it, what are you thinking about when you're meditating?
I don't know. Couldn't tell you. I just try.
Is your mind wandering?
It's kind of wandering.
Okay.
But instead of trying to quiet my mind or argue or wrestle with it and I'm not in the state yet, it's just like, look at that, wow, okay, look at that, wow.
Did you find a connection between that and creativity?
Yes.
Because a lot of writers will have that when they let their minds wander like that. Suddenly their subconscious starts working and things come to them. Tell us about that experience.
Absolutely, yeah. That's how it works for me even now. I mean, I meditate every day. I meditate in the mornings, and I go anywhere from like 5 minutes to 30 minutes. And oftentimes, I will ask a question, something I want to focus on, or a question that I have, or gosh, I think I've got a belief system interfering with me somewhere, but I can't find it. I can't put my fingers on it. What is this? And then I just get in my little meditation chair and get the thing going, and I settle in and I let the mind wander. And the answers will come, maybe not in that moment, but maybe 20 minutes later or something, or I'll discover something, or I'll get a new idea. That happened this morning. I had a new idea about something I want to write about. So yeah, it just comes, it's with ease. So I think for me, it's a way of finding relaxation, letting the creativity come through, creating space for it, and getting into some play.
So when you have an idea like this morning, do you write it down, or is it something you just count on yourself to remember?
Oh God, no! I write it down. I have hit the age where I can't count on my mind to remember anything.
I totally understand. Yes, I write everything.
I write it down, and if I don't have a pen, I will voice memo it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's how I started dictating, using voice memos. But it's so bad that I have in my shower, I have something called Aqua Notes. It sticks to the wall, and it's a pencil that's waterproof paper, because that's one of those moments, right? Aqua Notes. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Somebody please take a note of that for me.
Because we will all forget we talked about it. Yes. Yeah. Who are you and what were we doing here? So let's talk about before we get to, I want to talk about the writing a little bit, but before that, like, what are the major takeaways if somebody who's suffering through, even if it's not alcoholism, but some other kind of trauma, if you had a couple of takeaways that you really want them, what are your main points?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, and I do talk about that. Alcoholism and addiction was my path, but it doesn't have to be your path. And there are some really common themes here. It's the idea that I'm not the person I thought I wanted to be. My life isn't going the way I want. I don't feel like I'm in control of my coping mechanisms. And it could be anything from phone addiction to shopping to, you name it. There's so many ways we distract. What was it about? Distract, soothe, distract, and escape. Soothe, distract, and escape. Gaming is a huge one, right? There's so many ways. And it can get to levels that interfere with your life. It can interfere with your relationship. That can be a form of addiction, right? So there are common themes here. And one of them is tell somebody. You've got to be willing to tell somebody about what's happening. So there's an honesty. There's some principles called being willing to be honest, open-minded, and willing. You have to be honest about what's really going on with you, and tell somebody trusted, I need help with this. I don't know if this is normal. I'm not feeling good about this. You're going to find that as soon as you start opening up and sharing, there are so many people going through the same thing, and you are not alone and you're not unique. So that gives me a lot of hope that if they can get through things, and if I'm not alone, we're going to muddle through this and figure it out together. And being willing to take a look at it and make some changes. If nothing changes, nothing changes. So you have to be willing to make at least one change. And maybe that one change is just telling somebody what's going on and getting help.
I feel like there's almost a step before that where it'd be like a self-awareness that there is a problem, because a lot of people are in denial, right? When they have those problems going on.
Absolutely.
Is there a technique for people or something that would help it click in their mind that, there is a problem here. I'm unhappy. People know if they're unhappy, right? Or they can cloak that too. But if they're using these soothing techniques you're talking about, and they have a way to distract themselves from their unhappiness, is there a way to tell them this is something you should be looking for to understand you have a problem?
Nope.
Oh, good.
Nope.
So they just have to come to it themselves.
They
right?
do. I mean, how happy are you when people come to you and tell you, Jeff, you need to change. You need to change your life. Nobody likes being bossed around like that, right?
That's true.
And when you're not ready to give up your coping mechanism that feels like it's one thing that's saving you, that is a really tall order to give that up if you're not ready. And, my experience is I don't have any power over other people. And it's not my job to fix other people. But I can be a partner to them, and I can journey with them, and I can say, listen, if you are ever ready, I see you doing this thing. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here to listen. I'm available. I will stand by you. I'm not going to tell you what to do, and I'm not going to tell you it's time to talk to me, but I'm just telling you that if you ever want to, I will be a partner to you and be available.
So I guess I'm looking, is there a way for the individual to recognize in themselves, not having somebody come to them and say, you have a problem, you've got to fix yourself, but is there a way for them maybe they're not realizing that what they're doing is destructive, or that they have a problem, or they're doing these avoidance? Like, is there, because sometimes like you can point something out to people and they go, oh, I've been doing that, right? Like just hearing it from somebody else. And I'm not saying you tell them in person, but maybe they read your book, or maybe they watch this podcast. Is there some signals or something people should be looking for that maybe they could be a little more introspective and see that they're maybe, do their own work and see if there is a problem there?
Pain is a great teacher. Pain is the first one that comes to mind. I mean, and a lot of times, pain, shame, am I really afraid to tell somebody about this? That's a good indicator. Am I uncomfortable? Am I avoiding talking to this person, or going to this place, or seeing this thing? Am I cleaning up the house, and am I seeing that I've hidden some things? Those can be some good indicators. But yeah, it's usually most people when they're coming to that point of realization, there's something in their life that is not going great. It's they're not checking themselves into the Ritz. Something's not working.
Okay, so on the book, on the writing, you're doing a memoir. I'm always interested to hear, because you talked about the stories flowing out of you, and it was joyful to tell it. Is it also triggering to bring up memories and think about them in depth, about things that were not pleasant?
There was one section that was, and I talk about it. There's a first marriage, and I don't really call it a marriage. It was more like a karmic event. The marriage lasted 51 weeks with 4 separations. So it was really more of a karmic event. And that story started coming up, and I was shocked. I was surprised. I was like, oh my God. Are we talking about this? Like, I haven't thought about this in years. Really? We're going to talk about this? And the book said, yeah, we're talking about this. And I said, okay, here we go. And I went and I wrote the story. And it's interesting because the police were involved and there was courts. And so as I was digging through journals, I found, the statements the handwritten statements that I'd given to the court people. So I was able to copy it down verbatim because it was so long ago. I didn't want to get the facts wrong. I was really worried about that. And I was really surprised that story came out. And I talked to my friend Sarah, who I was working with from South Africa, and I said, I don't know about this. She said, if it came out, it is intending to be part of it, and it's going to help somebody. And I said, okay, because not in a million years did I ever once sketch that out in the outline that was going to be part of the story. So I just had to trust it. So
did the actual writing of that, did that affect your mood, or was it therapeutic in a way you didn't expect? Like, did you feel better getting it out?
No. It was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable. It was a hard time in my life, and it was uncomfortable. Now I do feel, it was a long time ago now. It's been at least 30 some years. So it's not fresh. I did do a lot of trauma work on it. I talk about that. There was nothing really triggering. It just wasn't the most pleasant aspect of my story. And to this day, if I wrote this book over again right now, I wouldn't have put it in. I wouldn't have chosen to put it in.
Why?
Because it was unpleasant. It was hard.
So you wouldn't have done it because of the unpleasantness of having to relive it and write it. Yeah. But do you feel like it helps the book?
I don't know. I really don't know. I guess so. I don't know. I'd have to ask some readers.
So that's interesting, right? Because in memoir, you can't get closer to your work than memoir. How do you find that distance as a writer to understand what's driving the story, or what belongs in there and what doesn't, and what's going to resonate with readers, and what is just something you're doing for yourself? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you get that perspective as a writer? Because it's hard if you're writing anything, fiction or anything. But this is your life. So how do you do that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because I never thought anybody would read this. I never thought it was going to be a book on shelves. So I wasn't thinking about, is this going to resonate with readers? I did not think at all about the marketability of this. I didn't think about whether any of these passages were going to resonate with anybody. Again, the story drove me. I kind of felt like that, like seriously, the story drove me. I just showed up for it every day, and it just did its thing. And so yeah, I started with an outline, a chapter list. I hate outlines, Jeff. I hate them so much. I think it's back to Catholic school. I just hate outlines so much. So Sarah said, "Well, just write a chapter list, right?" And so I did, and that was helpful because I've been sober a long time. I've been sober 40 years now, and I wasn't going to cover 40 years in a book, right? So what I really realized that I wanted to talk about was the process that you go through, the work that you do. And I was really going to focus on the first 10 years, which is really the span of this book. And so that informed what stories were going to go in and how the timeline was going to go and the things I was going to talk about. And then the structure, I spent 30 years as a technical writer, so I've got structure down, and so I used some literary techniques. And then it became almost, my experience of it was almost like a work of fiction,
right?
Because there's been enough distance now. And it's like my friend Marissa, in one of her reviews, she said, is this an adventure book? Is this a whodunit? Is this a memoir? I don't know. It's all of it, right? And that's how it felt to me.
I mean, that's what you're hoping for. It's when you're writing sort of a narrative nonfiction, right? It has to read like a novel, or it's not entertaining.
Right.
But you're trying to get the ideas across.
Yeah.
When you are the protagonist, though, how do you're looking at character arc? You have character change.
Yes.
It's in your outline.
Yes.
How hard is it when you are your protagonist?
Oh, that's a really good question. That's got me stumped a little bit. I don't think it was hard. I think it was almost like. So I think that now that I think about it, that's such a good question. I think it was almost like a technique for me to come back home to myself. It was bringing that young woman back in. It was embracing all of it. There's a poet by the name of Emery Hall, and she's got this beautiful poem called "I've Been 1,000 Women," and she talks about I've been 1,000 women in my life, my life today is built on the bones of them, and I'm bringing them home, and that's kind of what turning my younger self into that protagonist was a way to really bring her home in a new way.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's wonderful. So when you wrote this, you're being totally honest. You're putting your life out there because you didn't expect anyone to read it.
Exactly.
So then, when you realize you have a book, right, and now you're going down this road and you're looking for publishers. Is there a moment did you ever feel that moment of fear, which most writers do, regardless of what it is, that other people I don't know are now going to be reading this?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Oh, my God. I was okay. At the same time, I had left my corporate job and I was trying to stand up a business at the same time. And this book is coming out and I was suddenly panicked about my reputation. Oh, my God. What are people going to think? Holy Hannah. Oh, no. I regret my life choices. Wow. I was really terrified. And I was terrified that I had just gone too far. I'd been way too revealing. I'd been way too honest. And then I remembered my job, one of my passions is we are reducing shame here. And how did people help me feel less shame? By telling me their stories. So if this can help other people, then by God, it's worth it, And I just had to put my big girl pants on and say, it's out there.
That fear, all authors feel that when they put something out into the world, especially for a first book.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it's honest, and so readers can feel that, right? They feel the authenticity. Feel like if you're not honest in this, and you're glossing over things, people can just sense that.
Sarah said that to me. She said, "Listen, nobody wants it." So I'll tell you, one of the biggest barriers that I had from writing at all is that I don't want to sound preachy, right? I was terrified of sounding preachy, and I didn't want to make this a how-to book. And Sarah said, "Listen, the only way to avoid that is you got to give them the dirt. Give them the dirt. No one wants to hear from a goody two-shoes. You got to get real." And so I took that to heart, apparently.
Yeah. No, but that's great. That's really great advice.
Yeah.
So on the writing, when you're doing this, walk us through a little bit of the process that you were doing. So you had a basic outline,
Yeah.
and it's funny you say that, like in school, everyone's thinking of the one subcategory, but
yes.
but that's not really what an outline
No,
is.
it's
It's
a
more like
chapter
breaking it
list.
in, knowing where you're going, have an idea,
Exactly.
right? And so did you you said it was flowing out of you every day. Did you give yourself like daily word counts or time, or were you just writing until you didn't feel like writing anymore?
I was writing until I didn't feel like writing anymore. I started off, I read a lot of books about, I've got a volume of books about writing, right? And everybody's got different techniques. And so I tried a couple things, none of them worked. I tried the word count thing, that was too much pressure, didn't work for me. I tried sticking to a schedule, didn't work for me at all. And so I just decided to let all of it go and just sit down and write. My friend, again, I'm going to quote Sarah Bullen, talking about writing isn't writing. Researching writing isn't writing. You know what's writing? Sitting in the chair and writing. That's what writing is. And so I finally just let all the things go, and I sat in the chair and I wrote. The one thing that I did is when I encountered difficult parts of my story or things that gave me pause, I started handwriting. So I wrote much of it by hand.
Ooh.
Much of it by hand.
That sounds painful.
It's wonderful. Highly recommend. It is. I have terrible handwriting. Sometimes even I was like, but there's magic, and they've done studies, and neuroscientists know all about this stuff. There's magic when you connect kinesthetically pen to paper, and you tap into a whole different level of emotion that keyboards just bypass entirely. And so much of it was written by hand.
Yeah, there's that tactile sensation you get from writing, and there's also, if you grew up writing by hand,
Yes.
you're tapping into a different part of yourself
Yes.
when you're doing that.
Yes.
So you mentioned all these books on writing. Your writing's really good in this. So
thank
what were the books that helped you the most, like books on writing? Because writers are always interested in that.
Oh, Annie Lamott,
So you're
Bird by Bird.
yeah.
By Bird. That was one of the very first books I ever read on writing, and it's just so amazing. I love Stephen King's On Writing.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good one. And Writing Down the Bones, also amazing.
Those are great.
Those are my kind of go-tos. Yeah.
I love in Stephen King's book, he talks about his original ending to Misery. it's much darker.
It is. Creepy. He's a creepy man. Love him.
So do you listen to music when you write?
I do.
What do you listen to?
I have, I'm going to do a little plug for myself. I have recently kicked myself off Spotify. I cannot keep up with all the companies that we're boycotting Spotify today. Moved my playlist to Qobuz, and I have an official Bad Girls Club playlist. And it's all my favorite music from the 80s, and they can just play it at my funeral. Now I have the whole thing set up. But it's all that 80s club music and kind of punk and post-punk music. I was playing that almost every day. Loud.
Do you mention that in the book? Do you have a link in the book?
Oh, no, I don't.
Do you have a website?
I do have a website. There's a link on my website.
Okay, yeah,
for
but
it.
that's fun. I mean, people actually like to hear that.
Oh my gosh! And when I did my book launch party, I had this woman, Megan, was sort of my event coordinator for it, and she's in her 30s. So I said, listen to this playlist. Let me see what you think. And she's like, oh my God, there is really good music in the 80s. So I was like, who knew? Yes, girl.
So I always ask writers this, but you're writing your own story, but you're telling it as a narrative that kind of reads like fiction.
Yeah.
Where do you think this ability comes from? Like, where does story come from? Is what I often ask people. Whether it's fiction or nonfiction, you're still taking people to a place, and it's this connection between you and the reader, where you're writing things on a piece of paper, little dots of ink, and then they're creating pictures in their head. I mean, where does that ability come from? Where do you think story comes from?
It's the heart. I think it just comes from the heart. I think it comes from that's the humanity. It's art, right? It's that human desire to connect. I mean, people have been telling stories for, since the beginning of time, right? And there's some strong desire for us to connect together. And we do that through story. We do that through telling each other about our days, about our lives, and woven together, those become all kinds of stories. They become ballads, they become odysseys, This is the journey. And I don't know, this is my journey. Does any of this sound familiar to you? And you go, yes, I know that place. I was on that journey, and then there's this connection. There's this, it's love. It's love. It's from the heart.
Oh, I love that. So what, in this writing, like you're a technical writer, you've written professionally, what was the most surprising thing that happened to you during the process of writing here?
You know how a lot of writers need a really good editor because they've written way too much and they got to cut it down? I had the opposite problem. I had to learn how to draw things out because I had so many years as a tech writer, and tech writing is pretty terse, right? It's just get to the facts, man, as quickly as possible.
Right.
Get me what I need, get in and get out. Get me what I need and get out, right? And so the first drafts that I shared with my friend Sarah, she's reading it and she's going, "What? You gave me a car accident in one paragraph? That's a chapter. Give me a chapter." I was like, "Really?" So it was really hard work for me to start building it out and letting myself really get in there. It's like a permission thing. I had to give myself permission to embellish and really get in there and flesh it out. And that took many, many, many rounds.
Well, I can't think of two more different types of writing than technical writing, where you're just basically giving information, and this, where you're trying to create feelings and
worlds.
Yeah, it's incredibly different. So where should people go to find your book?
They can go to any online retailer, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, bookshop.org is a favorite one of mine. It is on Audible, available for download, and it's in all the formats, hardback, paperback, Kindle.
Who did your narration?
A woman by the name of Katie through Twin Flames Studios.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
That's terrific. And you have books here for sale, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you're going to do a signing now?
I will do a signing.
All right. Well, I always ask people, if you would take... Oh, do we have a question? Oh,
yes.
Good. I'll repeat it for the camera. Go ahead. What is your question? How do you market your book?
Oh, boy.
That is a good and impossible question.
That is a phenomenal question. So one of the things that I learned when I was on the writer's retreat in Kenya is that publishers do not do any marketing for your book. You do it all yourself. And so that's why they ask you, as part of your book proposal, what your marketing plan is going to be. And they ask you about your reach. I was very fortunate because when I was standing up my business and starting to meet people and talk to people and saying, "Hey, I've got this book coming out," one of my new friends, Minette Norman, said, "Oh, you need to meet Becky Robinson." And Becky Robinson has a book marketing company. And Becky is she's written a book called Reach, and I highly recommend it. And in fact, you should pick up her book if you've got a book or even thinking about a book. Pick up the book Reach by Becky Robinson. She's amazing. She's got this company called Weaving Influence. It is a book marketing company, but I ended up taking a short seminar of hers over the summer, and she basically gave me the entire playbook on how to market my book. So she had this amazing worksheet, and all you do is plug in your publish date, and then she breaks down all the things that you can do with lots of collateral and resources to use. I use Instagram primarily to market my book. And I do things like this, and I give it away. I think it's very important to give my book away, and I have a goal of giving away 1,500 copies. I'll just give them away, and I leave them places. I leave them in hotel lobbies, and all kinds of things. And I have wonderful friends like Jean, who put it in the Burke Branch Library, which is amazing.
Yes, I wanted to say, and you can get it at...
That's right,
the Burke Branch Library
in Alexandria, Virginia. Come to the library.
So I always ask if you guys would just take a moment and rate her book. It would really help whether you do it on Goodreads, Amazon, wherever you do it. It's really helpful. And if you like what we're doing with Elaine's Literary Salon, please sign up for our newsletter, elainesliterarysalon.com, and we'd love a restaurant review as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This has been really wonderful.
Lovely. Thank you.
Well done with your book. Congratulations. My pleasure.